All right, welcome to the Human SOS Show, episode 83, as we're going to discuss supporting team members in a time of difficulty. It's just me today, right now. Kevin may pop in. He had some work stuff come up that may keep him from being in the show today, but we'll still talk about things as we normally would. Before we jump in, I'd love to hear where you're joining from, whether you're joining from YouTube, Facebook, or more importantly, LinkedIn. Just type in the comments where you're joining from and then also just engage. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your thoughts about it, and your perspectives is really what makes this show happen. So hopefully is everybody having a great day so far. It's interesting, Kevin created a poll earlier and he asked, folks, if leaders should, do leaders need to support their team members during difficult times? And 96% of people said yes, 4% of people said no. And I'm even surprised that there was 4% of people that said no. And I would love to hear, why that is and what's going on there that could have caused that. But I'm just going to log in real quick and see, make sure that this is coming through live and everything's working just fine. Yep, there we are. All right. So I want to hear your thoughts on this. Is this something that you should be doing as a leader and supporting folks in times of difficulty? There's a very interesting comment that I was reading in Kevin's post from a person that said, leadership implies that you come from a place of emotional connection and vulnerability. And when you're able to emotionally connect with others, it's all about how your empathy taps into the highest potential of another individual based on how truthful, honest, and raw you are with yourself. Leadership can never exist without your humanity to others. And if that humanity is not there, then we could call it anything else, but it will never be leadership. I think that's one of my favorite comments that I've seen, and it is really profound. Talk about that in a second. But first of all, hello, Suzette. Hello, Karen. Appreciate you ladies being here. Thanks so much for tuning in. Um, but, that's something that before we even get into how or why or anything to do with that, we first need to understand that leadership, Kevin says this a lot. He says, manage things and lead people. You can't lead people without having emotional support. We can't be these robots that simply come in and do things by, A through Z, everything's stamped out, everything's programmed. That's just not how human beings are. People have hard times. People fall on difficult times. And oftentimes it's not just at work. This is going to be something at home. This is going to be something with their health. And this is why at Perspective Force, we focus on three pillars that we really help people with. We help people at work, we help people with health, and we help people with life. Because at any given point, any one of those three things can become a problem area that's causing them difficulty. And as leaders, we have to learn to be, noticing of this and have to be able to pick it up and find ways to pull it out of people. If you I've been that leader, and this is not necessarily from doing it well. I have a lot of experience from doing it wrong. And I used to have the open door policy, right? Where my door was open and anybody could come in and tell me what could be going on wrong. And I was prepared and ready to step in any way that I could. Hi, Rosemary. Thanks so much for joining. Um, I was prepared to step in and help in any way that I could. And I thought that that was enough. But the reality is, we've talked about leadership for many, many weeks now. I didn't have the relationship with these folks for them to feel comfortable to come in and help me to understand their problem. They didn't trust me, or they didn't know me good enough, or maybe they thought that I would judge them. So it's not enough to have an open door policy to have team members come in and let you know what's going on in times of difficulty. So, in your opinion, folks, those that are on right now, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think leaders can do to foster a better conversation to allow people to seek them out for help when they're in a time of difficulty. What kind of things are possible? What can they, do to make it easier? One thing is very simple: surveys, right? We have technology, we have a lot of tools that are easy to press a few buttons and we can launch out a survey to the entire team. What I encourage people to do is to do anonymous surveys. First, see how the team goes, and then give them opportunity to say their name later on. Maybe they can add it in an optional column. Now, why is this the case? Because in an anonymous survey, you can start to pick up kind of group situations, right? Many people are struggling with a similar thing. So if I can't help on an individual basis, what I can do then is come in and help a group of people by bringing in a life coach, by bringing in a health coach, by addressing some things at work that could be going on. So, what do you think that we could do in order to make that happen? But there's another comment from Bridget. She says, yes, as a separation and divorce coach, coaching men through this process, there is a large decline in productivity, stressful work environment, distraction, and inefficiency. Poor decision making, absenteeism, but providing support, understanding, and compassion can create a more loyal, productive, and present team member. So that's something that we as leaders have to grasp. We had a guest a few weeks ago, maybe it was been a month ago, and he was very real. And he says, until companies realize the fiscal impact on how stress and how, people that are not doing well gonna make on the company, they're not going to do enough about it. So we need to understand that there's a very big issue when your people are struggling, whether it be from work, whether because they're overloaded, whether it be from health because they're struggling to keep up with, their health or whatever, COVID, whatever may be going on, or from life, divorce, you name it, kid problems. Your performance at work is going to go down. And what that's going to do is it's going to spread like wildfire because fire, not flower. Because what's going to happen is these folks are going to bring other people down with them naturally, not because they want to, but just think about it. We talk about Bernie log principle a lot. When you have a bunch of gloomy people, the environment is going to become gloomy. So as leaders, it's up to us. It's on us to take on that responsibility to be the thermostat of a team. Oh, looks like Kevin was able to pop in. Let's add him in.
Hello,
Kevin,
Anton.
what's up, man?
Oh, just spending a little time with several hundred of my closest friends. Uh, we're out at an event for about probably 200 or 300 young people and a bunch of industry people. That's why I wasn't able to be in, but just a little bit here. I don't know if you can see what's going on. There can be
Yep.
competitions and just a big time young people learning about opportunities to do things in the workforce, hopefully become future leaders.
That's awesome. I love it. Are you traveling or are you by home?
No, I'm in almost to coastal Georgia.
Okay. So that's awesome,
New,
man. Always doing good things. You're always there leading from the front, supporting people in every way that you can.
well, I try. I hope you've got a good audience this morning. I know that based on the poll that I started yesterday, there's a lot of passion about the topic. And so I think we need to really help folks understand some good ways to provide that support. And I know that you'll be able to give a lot of insight since you have been there, done that more than one occasion.
Sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but I've tried.
Well, that's the way we learn, right?
For sure. But here's a comment from Rosemary. I've always had an open door policy. I also have a policy of conversation where everything that needs to be said is said, regardless of issue or ego or misunderstanding of the people I work with. Know that they can ask me anything or tell me anything, and nothing is shared outside that conversation. It comes down to people knowing who I am and why I am in their lives. And Rosemary, I really like that comment, and it made me reminded me that it's not enough for people to have a relationship with us. It also has to be a level of trust, right? Things that are shared are going to stay between you and this team member, or as a leader, you and this team member, because if there's a culture of gossip, which is a very dangerous kind of culture that many teams have, people won't be comfortable sharing some of the deeper stuff. They may sprinkle some light details and say, "Oh, I'm having some, life problems," but they're not going to come in and give you details. They're not going to be vulnerable and let you into their life. So I really like when you're mentioning that. We got Sharon here. Shout out to Sharon. Good morning, Sharon. We got Ann. Good morning, Ann. Thanks so much for joining, everybody. We're just discussing supporting team members in time of difficulty, and Sharon had a good comment that really made me think about making sure there is not gossip in the workplace, because or leadership is not going to go out there and talk about it. I've seen too many times leaders in meetings discussing employee problems, and they think, oh, because this is a leadership conversation, this is only leaders only. we can talk and we can laugh and we can do all these things. And it's just awful. I think when people do that, it will eventually get out. And when you break that trust, when you break that level of, what I say to you stays there, you're never going to earn it back. When it comes down to sharing something personal, you got it, you get it out in the open. Any thoughts on that, Kev?
Yeah, excuse me. Part of being supportive has to be part of the total culture, and that includes respect for people's information and their privacy. And because you can't just come in and do a one shot and done kind of approach being supportive, because life is not just about single events. It's about a total process. And indeed, it needs to have some ground rules with it, which include being supportive. There are lines even that we have to consider, professional lines, and how to approach those. So a lot of factors in it, but without the trust, it's very difficult to support someone because, like you said, if they open up and they're exposed, then the problem is that they're not going to open up anymore, and it's going to create some other challenges as well. So definitely.
Absolutely. We have another comment here. I think this is from Suzette. Yes, there appears to be an urgent need for leaders to voluntarily immerse themselves in self-awareness, empathetic retreats sessions. The conversation seems to allow stem from the standpoint from needs of team members. Leaders need to be held accountable, and that's also a different, a little bit more of a firmer statement. It's not just an option. Leaders have to be held accountable to being responsible for their team members. Leadership is a form of care, right? I think that's where these people are placed in our care. Me and Kevin talk a lot about this.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is very similar to parenting. They're very so much overlap there between being a parent and being a leader. And that is 100% accurate, Suzette. I appreciate that comment. And I think leaders have to look at it that way. We have to wake up in the morning, put our, pants, put our clothes on and go, how can I serve these people? Kevin talks a lot about servant leadership and how vital that is. And, that has to be not just a question from skill sets and development. It has to come from how can I serve them with better care? And how can I figure out in what ways I need to evolve, right? Maybe I'm one of those people, right? I'm not super empathetic, because my issue with empathy is that I try to put myself in other people's shoes, right? So this is a comment that I want leaders to be aware of. When you're trying to help people on your team, don't just put yourself in their shoes and think about how you would handle the problem, because oftentimes the way that you would handle it is not how they would handle it. And you need to understand who they are, how they are, and how they're dealing with it, and how you can help them deal with it in particular.
Yeah, the downside of empathy is that when we empathize, it is easy to only empathize from our perspective. Our empathy should drive us to move to understand the situation more, not just take it from our perspective only and react. Because you know, I'm empathetic, but at moments, some might consider my responses to be cold or uncaring. And it's not that that's the case, but that's the way I respond. And I have to be aware of that, because I may need to respond outside of my own preference because of my empathy. And it's empathizing well is a skill set.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, this kind of ties back into trust, because when we try to fix all the time, right? When people come to us and we're like, oh, I got a solution for you. I got a perfect thing that we can do for you. But we haven't shown that we're empathetic. We haven't shown them that, we're there truly listening to them. After a while, people are going to stop coming to us, because they don't want this robotic response. They sometimes just want to be heard. They sometimes just want to get things off their shoulders and help them to figure out a solution. Don't always just say, here's, this custom tailored, or here's this formula thing, I should say. We're going to custom tailor the approach, and maybe we're not even going to have a solution. Maybe this is just a conversation of me saying, I'm here for you. What kind of load can I take off work for you in order for you to deal at home with, right? You may not be able to solve some of their marital issues, or you may not be able to solve some of their kids' health conditions that they're dealing with. Who knows what that is? But what you can do is say, how can I support you here? I know that this is an area that maybe is not for me to go into, but how can I take some load off your shoulders, take some of that metaphorical water out of your bucket that we often talk about to help you
Mm.
feel better?
Uh-oh. Don't know what just happened. It looks like Anton has disappeared. Uh,
Sorry.
oh.
Weird.
I'm going, uh-oh. I didn't know I was stepping into trying to run this from my phone.
Kevin
um,
really obviously does this.
uh, but yeah, it's interesting. I don't know anything about trying to fix everything. Not that I would tend to do that or anything. Obviously, I'm being facetious because my initial response to any situation where I see people struggling or hurting is I listen long enough to hear what's going on, or close to long enough to hear what's going on. And my mind, its natural response is to start formulating a plan to overcome it, fix it, make it better. And like you said, Anton, that's not always the best. And I'm having to learn that sometimes I just need to practice design priority and keep my mouth closed and my ears and eyes open, because that's as much, quite often, that it is what is needed than anything.
Hmm. No, absolutely. And Anne says empathy is my number one strength, but I have had to work hard on it. Learning to be a great leader takes a lot of time, prayer, and effort. 100%. I know people that say that, oh, I got here, I'm a great leader, or I am empathetic. You need to constantly work on it. And the thing is, this is where stress comes in. This is where
Mm,
leaders have to manage their own stress. You have to manage your own load, because when your brain is not in that calm state, I wish I had the graphic right now. I don't have it up, but there's different levels of stress that we experience. And with each level
that's
come
your phone.
natural feelings that we experience and we have, right? So when we're kind of in a relaxed, low stress, that's when we're empathetic. That's when we're calm. That's when we're caring. When we're a little bit higher level of stress, that's when we're less empathetic. We're more focused on outcomes and tasks, and being able to go after things.
Mm,
And then the last one is when we get into that freeze mode, when there's been just so much stress on our shoulders. We're just trying to get through the day. We don't care about anybody around us. We're trying to just, I got to get to my own home so I can recharge. So as a leader, you have to remember that you have to be in that calm state in order
mm,
to be the most empathetic you can. So for that reason, if you're preparing for a conversation with a team member and you know that they're going to have a difficult conversation about something that may be struggling with, you need to put yourself in a calm state. Do some breath work, sit down, and let go of some of the thoughts that are clogging up your mind. Because if you're in a negative state and you're in that bad state of energy, you're going to pass that on to them. And just like Ann said, it takes a lot of time, prayer, and effort. You have to practice this. It's not a natural skill.
yeah, definitely a challenge. And when you get into that mode of being under stress, it's without even thinking about it or intending to, it's real easy to go from being a leader into a micromanaging boss. Because again, in the wrong frame of mind, you want to get this addressed and move on to the next thing, and that's not always the best response. And so, yeah, definitely need manage stress at that point rather than high levels of stress or what have you. In fact, I would suggest that really in those moments when we are trying to support someone else that is in crisis or having a tough time in a big way, is we definitely need to be in that green zone from a stress standpoint to be able to just by our presence and our demeanor to provide that sense of calm or that sense of um, it's going to be okay or what have you. I think that's a challenge that any of us as leaders have, is to make sure that we are in that zone for them.
Yeah, and Richard says there's something that's called the anxiety performance curve that speaks to that, and you're spot on, Richard. There's many different types of curves that this can speak to, but that's just definitely a good one. Thanks for sharing that. And folks, look this up. We've shared this on our show, months ago. Just been doing this so long, can't remember what what happened when, but I'm sure we'll recycle eventually. But it's really important to understand that stress that drives our not just our cognition but our behavior and the way that we interact with people, and we have to be in the right frame ourselves in order to be effective at it. Suzette got another good one here. I think that's Suzette. Sorry for being LinkedIn user. I don't know why sometimes it does this. um, in a beautiful conversation I had with Kevin, one of the nuggets he delivered was that each of us needs to have a vision for our lives where business is a sunset. Businesses require team members to devote 8 to 14 hours or more of their lives to objectives that honestly are not to their benefit. Team members spend their best hours at their workplace, not necessarily having opportunity for self growth or other dreams they may have. There needs to be greater emphasis on their well being. I don't know, it got cut off.
Yeah, I was going to
Um,
say it looks like it got cut off.
Yeah, if you want to add that in, I'll pop that back, Suzette. But I think that's such a good point, right? Like I am showing up as a leader. You're showing up for me. The reality, this has a lot to do, the work environment has a lot to do with me than it does with you. Usually I'm making more money. I may be through subset, Anton. Okay. Um, I'm making a lot more money. In reality, I'm getting the credit from the bosses if things are going well. I have to wake up every morning, like I said, with that culture of care and think about how can I serve these people because they are giving me so much. They are giving me 8 to 14 hours of their lives. And if they're struggling with something while they're here, I need to be like that parent, mother, father, doesn't matter which gender you look at, that comes in and says, "Hey, how can I take care of you while you're giving me this gift of your time?"
Well, and your key comment. Sorry for the background noise. They're cranking up some equipment around here. But the culture of care, and one of the things we have to be real careful of is that how we express that care, because as we've talked about on prior uh, episodes, learning to communicate care in the language that communicates to the other person, not just the way we perceive it. And that's another challenge as a leader to be supportive, is to understand that language of care, because early on, as I was developing as a leader and learning some of the principles that I now teach, I thought I was very caring. Come to find out that the my audience, 80% of them thought that I didn't care, and that was a real eye opener. And I had to make some adjustments, not in standards or whatever, but in how I approached it and delivered that, so that they understood the care. And when I managed to do that well, the dynamic of my team, my group, changed remarkably better. Uh, and it took some time, but boy, when it changed, I went, wow, I wish I had figured this out a couple of years earlier.
Hmm. For sure. I'm kind of looking at some of the comments that you have on your post that you made about this. And Carmela makes a good point. She says, not only leaders should care or provide support during difficult times, it's every day. Support from the
Yeah.
workplace can help increase an employee's feelings of accomplishment and their level of interest in their work. Employees who feel valued and supported perform better at work and go above and beyond. And what it made me think about is, support doesn't always mean that things are bad and I'm just here to listen to you. Sometimes support is maybe pushing you a little bit. I'm supporting
Mm-hmm.
you by making you advance, making you be a little bit uncomfortable to increase your skill set, to increase your performance, whatever it may be. But coming back to what I've said before, as a leader, you have to be a thermostat, not a thermometer, right? So you
Mm.
understand and you gauge, how do I provide support today? Is today me just listening, or is today me trying to develop them? Is today me trying to push them and challenge them, making them uncomfortable? Based on how your people are performing, based on how your people are feeling, most important, that should dictate. And really do assessments. I already mentioned surveys, needs assessments, right? Just kind of like a learner. You can do an assessment to figure out what's the best way to support my team, and figure out across the board, what are they telling you? How often are you checking in? If you're not doing one-on-ones and you can't get to your team, weekly, like because your team is large, find a way to do it virtually, or create some sort of a Slack channel where people can communicate and do those kind of things. And then based on that, figure out how to adjust.
Well, and as a leader, one of the skills that we have to develop and own in regards to what you're talking about is the skill of good observation. And that needs to be a top priority for us because there are times where we need to be able to simply observe there's a challenge or a concern or something going on because one of, like you said, we may need to push a little bit and encourage someone to uh, open up and share where appropriate. Again, don't force people into things, but we may have to help them overcome their discomfort and assure them that this is part of what we do and help them move beyond it. But we may not know it if we're not really good at using our eyes and ears well to see what's going on, notice changes in people's behaviors and demeanors. Uh, and so assessment, yeah, we got to have formal assessment and feedback, but we also need to be able to do assessments of situations. That's something you and I have learned in our military world, having our heads on a 360 swivel, so to speak, and situational awareness. And as a leader, that's another way that we learn to have good skills.
Yeah, situational awareness is an underused term in business, I think, and it needs to become much more prevalent because the reality is there's so many moving pieces in people's lives today, and there's so much more intermingling between life and work than there ever was before. We talk about work-life balance and work, in our society today, but me and Kevin talk about work-life congruence because they coexist. They're so intertwined right now that it's never been like this before. So for sure, we got a comment here from Richard. Sometimes people not interested in how you can help, they're interested in how you can be useful. In their mind, it may be that efforts from others to help have produced unsatisfactory results. That's a great point. I mean, this is coming back to the previous comment of how leaders need to practice their skills. It's not enough just to constantly be like, oh, I'm here to help, I'm here to do stuff. It's how can you actually make impact? How can you actually be useful? How can you actually make a difference? And it takes skills. That's why leaders have coaches. Like, you need somebody helping you through this, and in order to get better and better.
And Don, I think I'm going to need to run because it's going to get noisy and I'll become a distraction more so than usual.
You're
So,
never a distraction, brother. I appreciate you popping in.
well, I look forward to watching the rest of the recording later, and I hope everyone has an amazing time sharing and learning together. And we'll see you guys next week.
Have a good one, brother.
Take care.
All right. So there's another comment from Ann. Ann says, I really needed this today, guys. I've been dealing with a leader in freeze mode, and I didn't understand what changed. Today's conversation has been eye-opening. And then I appreciate that, Ann. That means a lot. And, I feel bad for these folks sometimes because they don't realize that there is actually a physiological explanation for what's going on, right? And I often talk about this where thoughts create chemicals, but chemicals create thoughts. And when we get into that freeze mode and we get into that place of just stress is just too much, right? We talk about this metaphorical bucket that is our capacity to withstand stress. Water represents stress. When there's a little bit a little bit of water in the bucket, there's always some stress in our life. We are at our best when it comes down to being calm, collected, thinking about others. When there's a decent amount of water in that bucket, we are best at accomplishing things, achieving, right? Our performance actually goes up as stress goes up until eventually there comes a point where that water starts to overflow. And that's that freeze mode. And that's when people don't realize it because they're just not aware. Our awareness goes down significantly when we're there. And what that causes is our social interactions go down, our ability to have introspect and look within, our ability to relate to others, our ability to be empathetic, all these different things, they go out the window. Why? Because we get into fear and survival mode. Our limbic system starts to get lit up, which is predominantly responsible for keeping us alive. And that causes people to not be their normal selves. And sometimes from an outside perspective, we're like, whoa, what's going on? Who showed up to work today? Who's this person that I'm talking to? And this is why it's so dangerous for leaders to not be aware and not to adjust their own stress levels. Imagine the situation, because I've been this person, right? I didn't take care enough of myself. And an employee comes in, and I'm normally very empathetic. I'm normally there to listen. And this employee comes in and they're sharing some things with me, but I'm burnt out. I'm sitting there as a leader and I'm burnt out. My body language says, get me out of this conversation. My mind can't focus on what they're saying. And instead of saying, you know what? I'm having a being vulnerable. I could have just said this very easily. I am having a really hard time right now. I didn't take care of myself. This conversation is so important. Can I take 10 minutes just to compose myself, go for a little walk, 30 minutes, whatever the time limit is? And then I want to give you my undivided attention. That person would have no issue with it. But we have to bring ourselves back and have enough self awareness within us to say that I need that time. I need to recognize that and walk away from that. So, let's see here. What else we got here? A lot of leaders have forgotten where they started. Absolutely, Suzette. This is a common thing that happens. We forget the little problems that we deal with, or that our frontline team members deal with. Sometimes leaders make better money than frontline team members. Sometimes leaders deal with different problems. They may not be as much customer facing. That's something that is providing support in time of difficulty. Time of difficulty is not always at home or with their health. It can be very much at work. Imagine it's that Black Friday. I've worked a lot of Black Fridays in sales, and it was rough. There was a lot of volume, a lot of pressure, a lot of customer service needed. And as leaders, if we've forgotten where we came from, we've forgotten what frontline is like, we are not going to remember how to help these people deal with problems. That's why sometimes it's good as a leader to poke your head in there and understand, oh yeah, I forgot. I'm living in this metaphorical ivory tower where I think the world is perfect, and I'm coming up with plans on paper, but in reality, I am not able to support that very well. Um, Listen to what Bruce Lee had to say about water. Yes, I do. I do like that. I do like how it tells water adjusts, and water is really, really awesome. It can be powerful. It can destroy things. Like a river can course through rock, but water can also be calm. I know I'm butchering it right now, but definitely, folks, listen to Richard right now and check out what Bruce Lee says about water. But this is just something that we have to step into, and this is not an easy thing to do. Supporting team members in time of difficulty, and to Richard's point earlier, actually being useful with our support requires a lot of work, requires a lot of effort. But if as a leader, all your schedule is full of is tasks, to do items, reports, when are you going to find to do that? When are you going to find time to do that? And this is one of the most important things I do as a leadership coach or a coach of any sort. When I work with executives as an executive coach, I take a look at their schedule. And it's very easy to see, what do they prioritize as a leader? Is it to do and accomplish things, or is it take care of their people? And if you're always trying to focus on doing and accomplishing things, you're just one person. You're just one of you. And if you think you can run this whole team, you can accomplish all these tasks that need to happen by doing that, you're going to fail. You are first and foremost a support system, right? When we think about leadership, it's not one person leading. When we chose a leadership icon for Perspective Force, we selected a person that stands in the middle of all these people, and there are lines that are running between people and through the leader. And all that leader is supposed to be, to me, it's a conductor, right? They're orchestrating and they're helping people to stay on task, but they're not doing most of the work. And if all your schedule is focused on is the work side, you can't support those people adequately to be able to help them out in that way. So, folks, I really appreciate all the comments today. I'm going to read a few more from folks that commented on Kevin's post, because this is kind of, I wouldn't call it going viral, because Kevin has a lot of followers. He's a popular guy. But a lot of people are saying, I really want to hear from the people that said no. Like I told you, 96% of people said leaders need to provide support. 4% of people said no. And I'm like trying to find one comment um, if they would describe somebody that would say no, and I just cannot. If you guys can think of of a reason why somebody wouldn't provide that support, I would love to know it because um, everybody's saying it's a must, it's absolutely imperative, need to be supportive, and more in hard times than in good times. And reality is we have to understand that we're living in hard times. This is kind of like forgot where we came from. We talked about work, but the financial situations, right? People are struggling financially. We right now are dealing with inflation. And I don't know if you've looked at the store. I went to I have this restaurant right on the corner where I live, and I get my burritos in the morning. Love my breakfast burritos. And they went up by $2 each. I was like, what? And for some that may not be a big deal as a leader, but for some people that are barely able to make ends meet, that may be something that's necessary. So I want to use a great example of actually something that I'm working on right now. I'm working on a project where we're instituting Workday. It's a big ERP system, and the team is being overworked. The team is being put under a lot of pressure. They're people that are having to handle their normal jobs on top of this project that just came in that is very, very time consuming. And we have a great HR leader, Ryan, and he basically said, what can we do? What can we do to help? And he's like, people are struggling. And he literally sat down with a group of people and he started brainstorming, finding out different things that people can do. And he realized stress is coming from finance. Some of this stuff is not necessarily project related, but he's like, okay, we're going to find 100 grand. We're going to put this on the table and we're going to figure out how to distribute it between people that need it. And we're going to support them. And I just think that that's such a great thing that he's doing. But at the same time, he's opening up. And he came to me with a list and he says, Anton, I want you to come up with some ideas, pitch it to the project team, next week. But he already gave me a bunch. And what I loved about it is there were some extrinsic and intrinsic things that they were doing. Some were support for people with just recognition. They're struggling, they're burnt out. Some were talking about a cascade email where people feel disconnected. They're feeling a lot of stress on their shoulders because they don't see the fruits of their labor, right? When you're lost in the weeds of a project or whatever it is that work may be going on, and you don't see the greater outcome of how your job connects to that bigger piece, you're going to feel a lot more pressure. So he's like, we need to send an email and show people how they're making a difference. He talked about, the money, the extrinsic rewards. He talked about time off, whatever people need. And that's what leaders need to do. So to the point that was made earlier, leaders have to develop and learn. You also don't have to have all the answers. That's the beautiful part. Bring a group of people together in and have them share ideas on how you can be better. This idea that as a leader, you can solve all problems, egotistical. Like it may be ego, it may be lack of your own vulnerability that's causing you to do that. But in reality, if you don't have the answers, and chances are you probably don't have all of them in the best ones, come back and say, what do you think we should do? Whether it be your subset of your leadership group, whether it be a team meeting, whatever it may be, help it out. Let's see, we got some comments here. Ann says, it gets confusing if you should be supportive when you get too involved. We say no when we hit overwhelm. Yep, absolutely. That's 100%. And I love that point. If that it's that freeze zone thing. We need how to take care of ourselves as a leader before pour more into our people. You really nailed it today. Thank you so much, Ann. But that's the truth. And this is what's sad about this, because I'm coming from there's so much stuff that I do wrong, folks, that I have a lot of examples of when I've done it wrong. I came from a health and fitness industry prior to going into talent management and consulting and things like that. And I worked hard. I worked 60, 70 hours consistently until I figured out a lot of things I was doing wrong. And when times got tough, when the team was under a lot of pressure, what would I do? I would stop my own self-care. I would stop working out. I worked in a gym, right? But I stopped working out because all my time went into tasks, into reports, into doing things. I did one-on-ones. I still, poured into my people. But with time, I had nothing left to pour. My responses got shorter. My body language, my demeanor, my energy, most important, my energy went away. And many people through feedback have told me, Anton, you lead through charisma. You lead because you make people want to follow you. You believe in us so much, more than we believe in ourselves, that we simply want to rise up to the bar that you see in us. But guess what? When I'm burnt out, when I am in that place that I'm just down because I don't take care of myself, that belief stops being projected out. And when you start still talking to people in the similar way that a military guy talks to people, But now that belief factor is missing because I can't project it out because of my burnout, everything breaks down. I'm no longer an effective leader at that point. So you're absolutely correct. Um, Yep, that one is already there. Let's see, one more. There is a blindsided view that pays the exchange for whatever team members are asked to do and be. Yes, that is a very good point. Support, in time of difficulty may mean different things. It's a very broad concept. Rewards is a form of support, but assuming that just those kind of carrot rewards, right, where you get a carrot in front of a person, you get more pay or you get a reward of some sort, that's what motivates people. No, it has to be a combination, intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. And in reality, in my opinion, intrinsic rewards work even better, because if you read a great book called Drive by Daniel Pink, he talks about how the stick and carrot motivation, right, do this and you get that, whether it be good or bad, stops working after a while. You need a greater and greater reward to accomplish the same amount of task, which is why he says don't give your kids allowance for chores. You can give them allowance to manage money, but don't give them allowance for chores. They do chores to help their family, to be a vital part of, to be a vital part of family and feel like they're contributing, but never mix the two, because it takes more and more and more for them to do that. Well, the same thing at work. If all you do is hit that external reward button of more pay, bonuses, those kind of incentives, you're going to end up with a demotivated team over time. And you can't increase rewards enough to keep them motivated. So you have to find intrinsic recognitions, intrinsic rewards, maybe development, and sometimes opportunity to shine. Think about this. Like, you may have a person that's doing well. That's do I sorry, I'm laughing at a comment. You may have another person that's doing really well. Maybe you're in that freeze mode. Maybe you're over, burnt out like I am. But you see a person that wanting to lead a team. It may be a peer. It may not even be a leader, and they want to provide support in some way. Maybe it's somebody that is a holistic healer. They're very energy, connected and very empathetic person. The reward for them could be that they get to step into that shoes and help. Many of you folks are helpers, you in a good way, meaning that you want to take somebody's burden off because it makes you feel empowered and impactful in those people's lives. So as leaders, some of those rewards simply could be getting out of the way and allowing other people to lead in time of difficulty. Let's see here. We got another comment. Your personal example made all the difference today. We're built from our mistakes. Thank you for sharing today. Yes, I I got a lot of those to share. But honestly, like it's because early on I realized that it's not my job to know it all. It's not my job to have it all figured out, and it's also not my job to be perfect. I think that I this comes from a story. So I did a survey of my team one time. I've been with this team for about 6 months, and this was still me, pretty young as a leader. And I asked them, what do you folks think I do in my spare time? And then those maybe watched the show for a while, you may know this answer. And I said, Anton, we think you go home, you sit with your hands on your lap, and there's a book in front of you that you flip one page at a time and you read. And I go, oh my goodness, like how far off base is that perception? But then I had to start looking and seeing, why is it that they're seeing that? Why is it that they're thinking that that's what I am, Mr. Perfect, Mr. Right, right? It's because it wasn't vulnerable. It wasn't sharing mistakes, and supporting people in times of difficulty. Connecting the dots on that is letting know that I struggle too. Trying to come in and put on this perfect face as a leader is exhausting, but also makes you robotic. It makes you seem like an unapproachable human being, because why am I going to share my struggles, my difficulties as a person to somebody that could never understand, because they don't deal with life problems. They're perfect. They sit at home with their book in front of them, their hands in their lap, and they're reading. So when that changed, my relationship with people changed. People understood that I screw up. I make mistakes all the time. I get home, I'm exhausted, and I get into arguments with my wife. I sometimes try to make time for my kids, but I'm imperfect about it because it was a 12-hour workday, and all I want to do is sit in darkness because I'm an introvert. Believe it or not, I am an introverted person that has learned to be extroverted. We do these LinkedIn live shows, but it's difficult sometimes. So telling that to people makes them feel like it's okay. And sometimes it's just a back and forth conversation between two human beings that is all that other person needed. Being useful, to Richard's point, is not always having a solution. Sometimes it's just letting them know that you're not alone. Like in times of COVID, everything we've been dealing with, having people understand that you're not alone from a standpoint of isolation is really bringing us down. It's not something that's wrong with you. It's not something that's going on with you that's not going on with everybody else. And all of a sudden, person goes, you know what? You're right. I was trying to explain this with a million different reasons, but it could be just that I'm isolated. It could be just that I'm not used to this virtual environment. And even though we've been in it for a while, don't think that people are still used to this. So check in with them and make sure that everything's good. So that's all I really got for you folks today. Let me see, make sure there's no other comments. Um, but next week, tune in back in. Kevin will be back. It's more entertaining, when there's two of us. But I just want to thank you folks. I want to thank you all for engagement. I want to thank you for keep showing up. Human SOS is something that me and Kevin have been trying to do for 3 years. We're not super successful. We're not super, good at marketing. Actually, we're terrible. Me and Kevin are probably the worst marketers out there. We're like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is when we're doing it. Show up, or this is how we can help. And so when you folks show up, when you engage, when you bring your comments, it shows us that we're starting to make an impact. We're starting to get out there and make people realize that human beings matter at work. And it's not just about talking. It's not just about, tools and solutions. It's everything, all of it. And it's finding those kind of things. And, so you folks give us the fuel. I don't say this enough, that if you all weren't showing up in the comments on a regular basis, me and Kevin wouldn't have the motivation to keep coming, right? We're not paid. We're not making money on this. We're not even using this for lead generation. This is just a pure hour of us delivering conversation and hoping that, it touches somebody that day, or a recording, or you speak to somebody about it the next day, and it makes an impact. So when you folks show up, you are our fuel. So I hope you folks have a great day. Enjoy your week, and remember to support everybody in time of difficulty, whether you're a leader or you're not. Have a good one. Bye.